Hello, and welcome to Driving Change, real talk about achieving racial equity in philanthropy. This conversation is hosted by Camelback Ventures. I'm Kristi Kimball, Senior Advisor to the Capital Collaborative by Camelback Ventures. I've spent the past 25 years working in nonprofits, government, and philanthropy. I recently stepped down after almost a decade in the role of Executive Director at a mid-sized family foundation.
Hi, I'm Jessamyn Shams-Lau. I'm also a Senior Advisor to the Capital Collaborative by Camelback Ventures. And I spent over a decade leading a California family foundation, advocating for philanthropy with humility, and also co-authored the book, Unicorns Unite, How Nonprofits and Foundations Build Epic Partnerships. Today, we are super excited to kick off Driving Change series today with our philanthropy unicorn, Armando Castellano. Armando is a perfect example of a philanthropy unicorn because he is a mythical, magical foundation trustee who is actively calling on foundations to provide more support to communities of color. And he also plays the French horn professionally. It's a pretty impressive and unique combination, Armando. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself to introduce yourself to our audience?
Thank you, Kristi, and thank you, Jessamyn. And I just want to say, Jessamyn, that many of the practices that you led in your family foundation work were plenty of seeds for me and fodder for learning for a lot of the stuff I do. And I started coming into philanthropy about 10 years ago. And I just wanted to say thank you for all that. And thank you for those introductions. Yes. So I have a lot of different hats beyond my philanthropy. I'm a father. I have two boys, and live in Menlo Park with my wife. And my two boys are getting older. One's in college and one's in high school now. And I'm also a French horn player and a professional horn player, where I mostly play chamber music and solo work. And I also, that as a chamber musician, I have a nonprofit within classical music that does advocacy work around supporting BIPOC musicians, but mainly Latino classical musicians, and having conversations around the lack of diversity in classical music, and do consulting work and performance and teaching artistry, and lead that nonprofit as well. And my philanthropy, and I could see it's very similar to what I do in philanthropy, which is also around trying to build power with other Latinos and on behalf of BIPOC leaders and Latino-led nonprofits within philanthropy, and talking about the tools and the practices and what we can do better as philanthropists to serve Latino-led nonprofits and Latino-serving nonprofits, to serve and support our BIPOC leaders within the field and within nonprofits, and also through donors of color, building power with other philanthropists of color, other high net worth individuals interested in having these high net worth individuals of color interested in having these conversations and sharing the tools that we do specifically as philanthropists of color. Those are the different hats I wear. And I think there's a lot of intersectionality with all the work that I do, and a lot of influence, whether it be community building through the arts or community building through philanthropy.
I love how interconnected everything that you're doing is. It seems like you've really figured out what your mission is in life and figured out various streams to make it happen. So we're focusing on your foundation work today. So can you tell us, first of all, just a little bit about why your family created the Castellano Family Foundation, and why particularly you decided to make racial equity and Latinx communities the focus of your philanthropic work? And actually, side note, what term do you prefer when referring to the communities you serve? Because people do use a variety of terms to refer to what I just termed the Latinx community.
Great, yeah, all good questions. And I run my nonprofit also does focus on Latino issues, as does my foundation, and I spend a lot of time navigating Latino systems, Latinx systems, Latin American systems, white systems, mixed systems. and how do I identify myself within those communities. And personally, I can only speak for myself, and the story for myself is around which term is going to bring more power to the communities that I hope to serve. So if I'm in a community of, as a third generation Mexican American living in California, which is a lot of folks like me, I really looking to, depending on the community I'm with. So if it seems like Latino is going to do the job to help build power, get my message across and have me feel heard, I can use that. I'm willing to use Latinx when that, again, when it's going to get my message across. If I'm in with other Mexicanos or other Mexicans, it's easy for me to be Mexican, or this other word Chicano, which means, it's an old word meaning Mexican American that we don't use too much anymore. And definitely if I'm with other Latin Americans, they're definitely going to want to say Latino Americano, a Latin American. So and I also think it just shows the diversity of our Latino identity, which is too often, stereotyped and seen as a caricature. And that happens in mainstream, and it happens in philanthropy as well, about what we care about, what our needs are. And the fact is, the language, the food, everything. And in fact, it's just incredibly, incredibly diverse. So really, I'm today, I'm feeling good about Latino. How's that?
That is great. We'll go with Latino.
Yeah. So there's definitely a lot there to navigate, and I feel for you guys trying to navigate it too as non-Latinos, and which one to use.
No, I totally hear you. It's very similar with the Asian community as well.
Right.
And, that's part of my identity. So I appreciate the background and just your take on that. Thank you for sharing. So then, looping us back to the initial question, tell us about why your family created the Castellano Family Foundation and why you decided to make racial equity and Latino communities a focus in your work.
Great. Well, so after, a lifetime of social change work and activism within Latino communities and BIPOC communities, my parents grew up in middle class life. My dad was, for most of my life, a grocery clerk, and my mother was an executive secretary at a community college her whole career. And they won the lotto. And my immediately within 6 months started the Castellano Family Foundation. My dad tells a story that the first thing my mom did when he told her was to write a list of all the orgs that they already were supporting, in any way they could. And that was the one she wanted to help first. She wrote a list. I wish she still had that list. And, but I love that story about him. And that's really the DNA of the Castellano Family Foundation. And so they started a number of practices that we do today, which include, giving to Latino-led, Latino serving nonprofits, giving to nonprofits that whose boards represent the communities that they're serving. And that's a question that we ask of our nonprofits, or giving multi-year general operations support only. And I think those are some of the things that my parents, knew and learned that was the best way to serve our color-led nonprofits. But that was the beginning of the Castellano Family Foundation. And the reason we focus on Latino identity is we're Latinos. When you're a person of color, I'm married to a white woman whose roots are entrenched deeply in Northern European. And what she found out, and when we had kids, is that people of color, we talk about color all the time. The color of our skin, the color of the people, the skin next to us, how it affects our daily lives, because we can't escape it.
Yes.
You look that way, and it affects how you navigate the world, and maybe even some safety things. Mm-hmm. And so it's a very much part of our identity. So it was natural for us as Latinos, and having my sisters and I and my parents, to start a Latino focused foundation. It was the focus of my parents' work and all of us growing up. Everything from ballet folklorico, Mexican folk dancing, to the art festivals that my dad used to lead and help put on, and certainly my mom's work and the community college system, creating Latino serving committees and entities within those systems.
That is amazing. And it sounds like your family really started with kind of ahead of the game with their intuition of how philanthropy should happen. So kudos to all of you.
Well, they're really listening, I think, to the nonprofits. And I think, I think that's where it came from. It's not us, it's them. It's the nonprofit's voice. Yeah.
Armando, that's a beautiful segue. I want to jump into a question about the recommendations that you've put forward for funders and the listening that you all have done. In 2000, the Castellano Family Foundation released the Blueprint for Change report in partnership with the Silicon Valley Community Foundation. And I just wanted to call some attention to that and ask you to share more about it. The subtitle of the report is a call to action for Silicon Valley philanthropy to engage and support Latinx organizations, communities, and leaders for the common good. And I was really impressed by the process you all used, involving 2 years of research, community outreach, and listening sessions with more than 65 Latinx-led and Latinx-focused grantee organizations. Can you share a few key findings that were most compelling to you in this process?
Sure. I think that, I'll share some personal findings for me as a philanthropist in terms of our practice, and then ultimately what the report, I'll share about the report. And I think the top findings are not going to be surprises to any of us in progressive philanthropy and talk. It's the same things I just said, that they need multi-year general operations support, bottom line, okay, period. And some of the top other finding, leadership developments. This was a surprise, not a surprise, which is staff wellness. Very, very high. Our color-led nonprofits are so, it's like they're constantly putting out fires and underfunded. And so that the wellness and they're serving communities that they care passionately about and are part of. And so they give everything of themselves, and they lose that side of their own wellness, and because they're giving so much to themselves. So staff wellness, general operations, multi-year support, leadership development, and then access to philanthropy, or the lack thereof. We know that those conversations and overwhelming majority of philanthropic dollars go into white-led systems and white-serving systems, and it's because many of the philanthropists are from those cultures and identities. That would make sense. So, but it just creates a lack of access to our color-led nonprofits and our color systems to philanthropy. So those are some of the top literal data findings. And I think for my own findings personally, that's what I really learned. Like, we need to listen to what nonprofits are saying. I actually don't need to come up with any ideas. Philanthropists always asked our opinion about how to solve a problem or what we should do next. And I'm always like, I don't have any solutions. I don't really need to. I just have to listen to the nonprofits and see what they're saying. What do they say we should do? Let's do those things. So I feel like the more farther I go, actually, I'm just more a conduit, and I'm listened to because I have a principle and a corpus, and I'm a principle of a foundation in so many ways. And what am I doing with that power? And who am I sharing it with? And how am I making sure that I'm not overusing it? So those are the things that I learned from it.
Beautiful. I can't agree more with the kinds of things that you've raised. The point about listening, and that where the real knowledge and the wisdom is in the organizations that we serve and support, I think is just such a huge mindset change for many funders, and so transformational when we really design our grant making in a way that trusts and values those that we're supporting. So thank you for putting that forward so clearly. I also just want to call out with this next question, your point that access to funding is such a huge barrier for for nonprofits. And
It's a nonprofit's leader's point, by the way. It's not mine.
Yes, right. Good point. Good point. The point that you heard in the research that you all did. Exactly. And so again, it really, you all are walking the walk here as you not just release the report, but you also then put out a call to action to other funders to say, hey, we need to raise more money for this community. And I know you all launched the Latinx Fund for Latino organizations, aiming to raise, I believe it was $10 million.
Our goal, yes.
Yeah. And I know since then, of course, COVID hit and the world changed in ways none of us expected. And so I'm wondering kind of where is the campaign at today? Where have you been able to find the most impact and what areas have been harder?
Great. So we launched the blueprint report. It was weeks before COVID. And then about a year later, we were able to formalize our partnership with Silicon Valley Community Foundation, who holds the fund, and the fund is there, and we're a community partner in that fund. And the learnings from that are, first of all, this fund, we're about a quarter of the way there on the fund. And we have had our first cycle of giving. What I really appreciate in the partnership with Silicon Valley Community Foundation is they're putting dollars and admin time, as are we, and as are a number of other funders, towards using the practices and the ideas that come from the nonprofits in this fund, in how they give it away, and how whether it be the reporting or the applying, and the cycles of giving are the ideas for that come from the Blueprint for Change. And so it's been an awesome partnership. And I'm still, we're still working it and wanting, looking to complete the fund itself, which is going to be over a number of years.
Well, congratulations on having started down the path and pulling so many others into the work. It's really inspiring.
Thank you.
Amen. Yeah. So for funders who are watching us today, if they were only to walk away with one action, which one of the recommendations from the report would you urge other funders to prioritize most highly?
Can we give them one or two?
One or two. Okay. You don't have to just pick one or two.
I think that the ones that the nonprofit said are just, I'm beginning to think that it would be hard for them, the general operations support and the leadership development and the staff wellness access. It's hard to even imagine those happening without the other thing that I shared with the learning from the Blueprint, which was around the sharing of power. And I think if that's the tool I would share. I did a little mini talk at a conference last week, at a philanthropy conference, a Trustee philanthropy conference, and they asked me to do an ask. So it was like there was like 8 people that got to ask at the conference for something, and what I was asking for was for a partnership in stepping down from power, in the partnership in being quiet and listening more, and when you're listening, to listen with an open heart and putting the way you think systems problems should be solved, putting those aside and trying to expand what the way a problem can be solved with your money, beyond what you see in front of you. And so that really requires, again, a deep listening and less talking to no talking, somewhere in between there, and opening your heart around what the community that we hope and to serve and seek to serve is really saying that you should do. That's a really self-reflective individual process for wealthy individuals who can pretty much do whatever they want sometimes. to decide to do. And so for me, I'm not gonna be selfish here. That's my biggest finding that I would look to have partnership on, beyond those really, frankly, totally obvious low-hanging fruits that of the grantees said. I mean,
Yes.
they still say it, but I think that those can't happen without philanthropists really making that power shift and learning how to share power and learning how to listen deeply and then do what the communities are saying.
Yes, yes, and so much yes. I love everything you just said. And I'm in our last question, because we are coming towards the end of our discussion. I want us to reflect on the future, but also just build on what you just discussed around power. So if your hopes and dreams were realized for reform and philanthropy, and funders took the steps that you're urging them to take in the blueprint, how would things look different for Latino communities? Let's say 20, 25 years from now, what does it look like when they have more power in the philanthropic process? Like, can you paint a picture very practically? What is their role, and and how do things change for them?
Well, I think I see pockets of it already. Like everything just gets easier when we're at the different levels of these organizations, like the board and executive level, and helping make the decisions, those bigger high-level decisions. Then everything down from there is intuitive and natural, and I think the communities are better served and empowered. And so I think that that's what I hope to see in the future. I really try to have these conversations with the people in the highest power, like I said, the board, the trustees, the principals, about both these tools and what the grantees are saying. And I would hope that kind of change can happen in those chairs. And that I think then the rest, like I said, all the programmatic stuff, the directions of the money, will just be a natural, because those people will be populating those upper levels. I think that's what I'd like to see, and I hope to see, and we're starting to see a little bit of. Did I answer your question? Did I answer your question?
Yes, you absolutely did. Yeah, I mean, more representation of the communities in those seats of power, and I couldn't agree with you more. It's a really, really powerful vision for the future of philanthropy and the way that philanthropy works with and for communities. So in wrapping up today, I think we just really hope that people listened, heard what you were saying, that people feel inspired to take action. And Armando, we really hope that you're able to raise the full 10 million that you're aiming for with the Latinx Fund.
Thank you.
Anybody watching, you can check out the Blueprint for Change report and all those specific recommendations for funders that were mentioned on the Castellano Family Foundation website. That's CASTELANO-FF.org.
Thank you.
Great. And we also urge viewers to check out the Capital Collaborative Program by Camelback Ventures. This is a fellowship program that helps white funders deepen their commitment and efforts to advance racial equity and racial justice through their own work in philanthropy and impact investing. And we're accepting applications now for the 2022 cohort program. That info is available online at camelbackventures.org. Thanks so much, Armanda. It's been wonderful talking to you today. I appreciate it.
Thank you both. This is great.
Thank you.
Okay.